Hello, everyone. My name is David Knipe. I'm the Senior Film Programmer at the Gimli Film Festival. Thank you so much for sticking around after your screening. I hope you enjoyed the film Give Me Liberty, which was written, directed, edited, and produced by Kirill Mikhanovsky. We're so very happy to be able to be joined by Kirill today, and he's going to talk with us about the film. Kirill, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Great honor to have our film screened in Canada. So it's really fantastic. It's really wonderful. And just to clarify, the film was written by myself, but also by Alice Austin, prominent American playwright and writer. And she's also the head, was the head producer, I would say, the main producer on the film. And it's produced by Alice Austin, so it's a teamwork effort. Just to clarify.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So why don't we start at the beginning? You can tell me about the origins and how the film came about. Where did it all start?
It all started in Milwaukee. It was a number of years ago. I had a first draft of a futuristic thriller, and I was looking for a partner to rewrite it, to give it take it for a spin. And at some point, I got introduced to Alice Austin, who at the time was affiliated with the two major American theaters, the Goodman Theater and Steppenwolf. I came to the reading of one of her plays, and soon after, we began to work together on this very messy first draft, and it took us about 9 to 10 months to turn it around and turn it into a second draft. I was, however, as a director, getting kind of antsy. I needed to do something, to direct, and I had this assortment of wonderful stories from my past life. One of the many jobs I had was as a driver of a medical transport driver. And I kept telling Alice about these stories. And at some point I, suggested, to make a film based on those stories. And she agreed. We shook hands and decided to go into it together. We thought, it'd take us about 1.5 years max to churn it out and find, the small amount of money that we needed to make it. But little did we know, it took us 5 years. Not to make it per se, but to actually get it off the ground. And it turned out to be quite not as easy as it seemed to us at the time. Compared to the futuristic thriller that we were working on, we thought that'd be a piece of cake.
Yeah.
But that's how it all started. And it started in Milwaukee. The job I had was in Milwaukee. And, when Alice and I met in Milwaukee, we came from different worlds. Alice had been traveling all over the world as a lawyer, as a playwright, as a writer. She has an extensive family, and at some point they moved down to Milwaukee. And I had just arrived back from a beautiful but painful experience of building a project that didn't pan out. In Cuba, it was. I spent almost 2 years on and off. I made the mistake of putting all eggs in one basket. The basket broke. I came back to Milwaukee to get my bearings together, reconnect with my family. And this is where we met. And the project was inspired by Milwaukee. And from before we wrote a single line of it, we knew we'd make it only, we would not compromise two aspects of it. We needed to start somewhere. And that is Milwaukee as the main character and non-actors. And interestingly, these two elements, they determined the destiny, the fate of the film, frankly, because precisely for these two reasons, for a very long while, we weren't able to raise a penny. Nobody wanted to invest in a film with no actors, no stars, no talent, and in Milwaukee. No one wanted, outside was interested in Milwaukee. There was no tax incentive in the state of Wisconsin. And inside Milwaukee also, no one was interested in making a film. We got a little support in Milwaukee, little but important support boost from the local film organization, Milwaukee Film, headed by visionary Jonathan Jackson. They created an incredible festival here, one of the most well-attended film festivals in the United States. And also they now control the historic Oriental Theater, 95-year-old theater, a shrine, beautiful.
Mm.
So they gave us a grant, a Brico grant for the script for the project we were making, but that was about it. And at some point down the road, we got a few sponsors slash investors, executive producers, minor executive producers in Milwaukee, but essentially we had to go out there, to find the money. So it all started here, inspired by Milwaukee, made in Milwaukee, Alice Austin and Kirill Mikhanovsky, and it's kind of moms and pops, but there's more to that story, but it depends on you, what you want to hear.
Sure. Yeah, I'm so thrilled to hear that you stuck true to your vision of wanting to keep it in Milwaukee, about Milwaukee, and using non-professional actors, and it really comes through in the authenticity of the film. And maybe so many points we could jump off from here, but maybe if we can just start talking about, since you brought it up, the kind of community aspect of in making the film and how you kind of brought people together in the Milwaukee community and rallied around each other and kind of made this film as a collaborative effort.
Yeah, well, I always say I'm not a social worker. There was no political agenda there. I want to make films. And shed some light, on the world and bring more light into the world through the work that I write, direct, and, whatever I do with it. Yeah. And I think, it's pretty safe to say that my partner in crime, Alice Austin, has the same mission. And she also does a lot of writing on the side, as a writer and playwright, and also screenwriter, partnering with other people. But, we work a lot together, of course. So that was the mission, to make a great film, and to working in Milwaukee. You have to start with somewhere, and we were living here, and I knew this place, I knew the job. So that's a good point of departure, you see. And some of the stories that happened to me, even though none of them made into the film, but they were, like, you got to start jumping from somewhere, right? And also it's a technique of working with non-actors, introduced to us by directors, from the time of neorealism in Italy. And, it's an old technique, but it can be used very successfully to achieve certain result, specific result. And we had a very specific result in mind. I had previously experience of directing and directing for screen. And my first feature was made in Brazil, in a small fishing village, with all actors being non-actors. They were fishermen, and I would never be able to find and train actors to become fishermen. It's just impossible for the type of film that I wanted to make. And so, with that positive experience, I proposed to Alice, who had primarily experience of working with actors in theater. I said I would like to work with non-actors, and that immediately set the bar very high in terms of just what were we trying to portray, because there's no reason to put yourself through this grinder of working, of looking for non-actors and working with them, unless you are going for a particular effect. But as a result of that work, as you correctly pointed, they're just almost like a byproduct or something that was evolving parallel to the process of making a film. We actually did, create a community of people. We brought people together. We created jobs. We formed relationships and partnerships. And it became so much more than just making one smaller film. It became our life, our lifestyle, our American dream, if you will. Because, we didn't plan to go on for 3 years before making the film, but we ended up, we had to go through this 3-year grinder. And in the process, again, we formed relationships that went on for 3 years, 4 years. So by the time people stepped into the frame, they were our friends. They were someone we knew. Yeah. And it helped the process, really, because we had very little money in the end, only a fraction of what we needed in very little time. But because of these relationships that we had, and because of this, the time that we took cementing these relationships, certain things, very important things, energy-wise, transcended. And, and that's, you can't plan for this, really. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to spend as much time doing film work. I would like, to make them at a slightly faster pace, or much faster pace, frankly. But I guess this specific experience that people have just seen, called Give Me Liberty 2019, made by these people, could be achieved only this way. There's no way to shortcut that one, you see. And I'm sure it's possible to make a film in 2 years like this, or in 1 year, or even in 6 months or 3 months. Yes, but those would be different films, very different from the one that you've just seen. And so, yeah, as a result of that, basically, in that, we did a lot of community casting. A few roles were cast by professional casting directors in New York and Moscow. But 99% of the people you see in the frame were cast by Alice and myself. And basically, because it took us such a long time to find funds to make the film, we just kept casting. We just kept coming to their Wisconsin African American Women's Center, headed by the great community leader, Josephine Hill, who very kindly just gave us the space for free. And for 3 years, we'd come in almost every week. And whoever would pop in, we'd made flyers. I don't know, they're probably sitting somewhere around here. Actually, I had a stag the other day. I didn't want to throw it out, but it's time for it to go. But, we made flyers, we spread them all over the city. You're looking at the person and Alice, we just drove around and going to the various neighborhoods. As probably it's Milwaukee is one of the most segregated cities in America.
Yeah.
By some accounts, the most segregated city in America. Around the time we were making the film, we had the highest murder rate per capita. Horrible statistics. It is a very segregated city. So what we set out, the whole point of making this film is about this small little van that actually connects different parts of town and brings people together. It's not a manifesto. It's not propaganda piece. It's not a political statement. These people need to get to their places, and just by way of just the way that they went, they happen to be on the same bus, having more in common than not. And all of a sudden they were together. And and this is exactly how the experience of the making of the film went. All of a sudden, different people from different walks of life were together doing the same thing, and it was beautiful and natural. There was no agenda to that. It was just the beauty of our common denominator called humanity. And we had no problems. We really had no problems all these 5 years, and people didn't have any problems with us. And it was just the way things should go. People should work together and not look at their past. And I'm sure it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yeah. I think it really shows in the, as you were saying, the time and the care and that you took in casting and that process, and also, in that process of community building. I really think it shows off in your depiction of some of the characters and how you champion people from different walks of life that so often in screen representations get marginalized or patronized, left behind. Can you talk a bit more about your casting of people with various disabilities, your casting of Lauren Spencer as Lolo and Tracy, and how you paid respect to the various actors in the film that way? Because I think it really comes through.
Well, we didn't do anything special. This is, we love everyone who's in the frame, naturally. So no extra effort was made to show them the way they were shown. Somebody said it very beautifully, complimenting the film, said something along the lines of, I don't remember exactly the epithet they used to describe the film, to rave about it, but they complimented the way that we brought people, we allowed people to be themselves.
Yeah.
And that was the whole idea of casting. If you're not allowing people to be themselves, what's the point of casting non-actors? You're probably better off casting a professional actor who'll be on time and, sign all the paperwork and, yes, sir, we'll do 25 takes in a jiffy, Yeah. And it'll save some time and save some days and save some trouble. but it's going to be a different movie. But we decided to go another way that is replete with you know, challenges, let's put it this way, but also is very gratifying because of what you end up having, which is golden. You know, people bring their lives to the screen. And the Eisenhower Center for People with Disabilities, it's a work center, it's a working center, it's an incredible place, one of the best places on earth, in my opinion. People go there to work and they make a living. The place gets a lot of contracts that other factories or places don't want to have because they're not very high paying, and the kind of jobs that wouldn't be outsourced, as we call them, wouldn't go to China. Somebody got to do these jobs, and we have this center where people are willing to do this work for less, but nevertheless, you know, it keeps them busy. They do terrific work and they get paid, and they feel as useful members of society. And you know, it does a lot. You know, I mean, it's beautiful. It's the way it should be. You know, and they're amazing human beings. I mean, it's the best place on earth, in my opinion. I go there. I haven't been there in a while, frankly, for so many reasons, as we all know, and they just reopened. But every time Alice and I would go there, and at a certain point, it was like year two, we're still not making a movie. We realized, my God, we're coming here every week, twice a week. We became basically, we haven't made a movie, but we became social workers. And it was kind of funny this way, but it was beautiful because we formed relationships. People know us by name. We know everybody there. With, you know, everyone we know there, and by name, and just, you know, it's about trust. It's about trusting each other, right? So at first, when we showed up there, I remember the place from way back when I was working there, but many years had passed, and so when we showed up there, one of the directors of the place, Rabbi David Orden, was very kind. You know, he, you know, received us and, you know, heard us out, understood what we're trying to make, introduced us to the staff and everyone around, showed us around, allowed us to keep coming back and just learning and doing, just watching and learning. And I could tell that they were very cautious with me. They, you know, it's because places like this, they're about trust. Yeah. And, you know, people with disabilities, they were hurt enough, and they, you know, and probably have some, you know, it takes time to earn their trust for good reason. And it took a long time because people really didn't know, nobody knew really what are they trying to do really, you know? And I think at some point it began to come through how respectful we were toward the place and toward the people. And at some point, we actually, because people didn't believe we were going to make the film. And at some point, hey, we're actually making it. And that, I think, was an important milestone for them, because at that point, they understood, okay, these guys are serious. They actually are trying to do something. Mm-hmm. They thought, I don't know, maybe it was some kind of a con, or maybe not. If not a con, maybe they thought, I don't know, they're just dreaming or something, you know, maybe they're never going to, you know, with Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I mean, you know, it's weird. And all of a sudden, we're making, we had a team, we had a camera, we had this, we had that. And they're amazing. I mean, I had a blast working with everyone from the Eisenhower Center, especially Steve, the friend of Vic's, and Michelle, the one who was singing Rock Around the Clock, mm-hmm. and a number of other actors. They're brilliant. I mean, they're on time, funny. Their comedic timing is impeccable. They're brilliant. They're just so much fun to work with. And I never had in my life so few problems with actors. I mean, it's incredible. It was a blast, really. I mean, my only complaint is, you know, about like not having enough time to do more. But it has nothing to do with them, actually. And so we filmed it at the center with them. So that was, and we had very little rehearsal time with them. And really, honestly, they were picking up really fast. Steve, brilliant. He would just stand nearby, listen to me talking to other actors, just kind of, and roll with the scene. You know, whenever somebody would talk, his reactions are impeccable and brilliant, like super sharp. I mean, he's amazing. So that was a blessing, truly. Now with Tracy, played by this genius Lolo Spencer. You know, this is a major role. And of course, you know, when we ended up, Ellis and I, we had a lot of fun writing the script. And once it was done, we looked at each other and like, we're so screwed. because where we're going to find these three amazing characters, because, you know, we're in Milwaukee with limited resources. So, of course, we went out for these three actors, and Alice used her extensive network in Chicago, a casting director, I believe, in Chicago, who referred her to a casting to an agent in Los Angeles working with actors with disabilities. And we had a very precise description for the character of Tracy, for everyone actually, but, you know, specifically for Tracy. And the first person we were introduced to was Lolo. And it was, you know, love at first sight. And we met for the first time in person. And so it happened one day before the shoot. Wow. For a year and a half, a little bit more than that, we had regular Skype sessions. I was learning. I was just talking to Lolo ad infinitum, talking, just learning about her, and you know, making a lot of elements from her real life, taking him, kind of, giving him to Tracy. Okay, great. You know, Tracy does that. Fantastic. I love it. You know, okay, am I seeing a book, like autobiography, Mike Tyson behind? Are you into Mike Tyson? Yeah, okay. Well, I am very much into Mike Tyson. I think he's a flawed American hero of sort. And so, okay, we have this fascination with Mike Tyson. All of a sudden, we found out at some point down the road when we finally found the actor who played Dima, that Mike Tyson was his hero since he was 6. You know, so, okay, we got this connection. And so he had the photo of Mike Tyson in his wallet. I mean, that's all. So it all was coming together. So Lolo was really a stroke of great luck. Dima took a very long time because there were attempts to cast him locally in America, but with some Israeli actors or Eastern European generally actors, it didn't work out. The level again of authenticity was just not there. And so I went to an old friend of mine with whom I worked at some point in Moscow, a brilliant person and very generous, very kind, who sent us probably close to 100 of different faces. And until there came a point, it took us such a long time to get the movie financed that by the time we were able to make it, they came into existence a new generation of actors. And so, I mean, life has...
Everybody grew you.
Yeah, everybody was sort of like, maturing up, growing up, catching up with the movie. Or we had to catch up with them, or just we had to wait actually for them to find us. And so the day we got the photo of Max Stoyanov with his smile, that was before when I tortured him with a number of videos. He did a lot of different tests just to make sure, because I needed to build a portfolio for him to convince some people that he was the guy. But I knew he was the guy, of course. But I kept on just torturing him with these things. I call it torture, but really, I mean, it was sweet. It was, he remembers it. He really enjoyed it. But at some point, it got a little bit tedious. But at any rate, that was also difficult, but not that difficult. The most difficult one turned out to be Victor. And frankly, I had experience with my first feature I did in Brazil, and the main actor was in every single scene. And this superhero of a young man, 18-year-old, a diver, professional diver, going 100 feet, to the bottom of the ocean, and lobster fishing, and also doing capoeira, and just being kind of this semi-god of a person. And I thought I would never be able to find that person. And we found that guy on the first day when we arrived in the village. The first day, I mean, I just like, that's the guy. And it just so happened he was everything that I needed him to be. And I thought that somehow that this, because sometimes the most difficult role is the easiest to find. But there are some equally important roles that you cannot do without, that are they end up being the hardest ones to find. and they're as important, frankly. It's like, you know, what's more important, your right arm or your left arm? You know, both are, you know, I mean, yeah, I write with my right one, but you know, it doesn't mean that my left one is. So it's every part of your body is important, the same way with actors. And I think the true craft of the movie is always tested with the supporting cast and with extras, how they're organized in the frame, how life is organized, and in terms of how people stand and move, and the supporting cast is very, very important. I think a good craftsman will always take time and a lot of care organizing the supporting cast. Very important. And so I frankly thought that the main character would be a piece of, like, it would just happen, I thought. No, it took 9 months. It took 9 months. Wow. And somehow we got very lucky, because in the process of looking for the main actor, we lost our ill-fitting partners. And it was a blessing in disguise, I guess, because it happened in October of 2017. Finally, we found someone with whom the script resonated. They took us to a very important investing group in New York, and all of a sudden we became the hot toast of the town, and the most coveted role of Victor in the world. We got dozens of love letters from actors all over the world, and it just became this hot script. And then while we were looking for the main actor, we couldn't find him. That slowed the process down. And interestingly, in the process, we lost these ill-fitting partners. But we found the right actor for the role. And now, of course, it's impossible to imagine anyone else in that role. Jennifer Venditti, the casting director of Good Time, Uncut Gems, American Honey, a brilliant casting director, New York-based director, just a brilliant psychologist, and just a cultivated person all around. And she really got the eye for things. She sent her scouts to Brighton Beach. They spent 5 weeks, I believe, looking for the right person, and they got a little bit despondent, got a little bit frustrated with the search, because they couldn't find the right person. They really didn't see anyone until one night, the day was coming to a close. They saw someone with friends who looked interesting, and they heard him speak English, Czech, and then they followed him into a Russian-owned bakery, and they heard him speak perfect Russian and Czech too. And they approached him as he was leaving the bakery with a cake for his grandfather's 25th anniversary in the United States, you know, the poster boy. Yeah. And they approached him and said, "Do you want to be in the movie so-so?" And he laughed them off, of course. I mean, he thought it was a prank or a scam, some kind of a con, you know. He thought it was, you know, they were looking for a porn actor. Frankly, that's what he told his family. Later on, he confessed that to us. So Jennifer met with him a few times and had a series of long conversations with him, just to get through to him, to understand the background, the psyche, would he be able to, because he had no previous experience. And then a friend of hers, a professional acting coach, did a couple of sessions with him just to pull certain things out of him and film them to show what he got in him. And we saw those videos. And frankly, I have to admit, Alice fell in love with him. I think Alice loved him instantly. I didn't like him. He grew on me. And I think it just the way, you know, everything has a destiny, I believe. And the film had its own destiny, and it needed to fulfill itself. And somehow, you know, it just came to that, and it became a natural decision. And you know, and of course, I not only love it now the way it turned out, but it's also a part of me. And but I'm never afraid to admit I didn't like it. I didn't like him immediately. It wasn't love at first sight, but he brought certain type of nerve to the screen, I think, to the frame. certain intensity, level of intensity, and the awkwardness, and this sense of protection, and very sensitive human being, incredible human being with a great heart. I think he had it the hardest. But I gotta admit that I mean, I love a lot of people in the movie, but I always especially speak of Lauren Lolo Spencer, because she brought certain type of genius into the film, because she came prepared, absolutely 100%. She knew every line, cold, brilliant. And I was learning things about her as we went, because we didn't have time to test much, to play around, to even rehearse much. And the very first scene in her life that she did, she came with some preparation, I would say, because she's an influencer. She's a YouTube personality. She did some public speaking, so she's used to speaking to larger groups of people. And
her first feature film, correct?
Yeah, her first feature film, in such a major role too. Yeah. And she carries it. She carries it. And every time, as an editor, I can tell you, I was watching film, and it was like walking into a chamber of horrors. And every time she's in the scene, I was like, thank God, Lolo, thank you. You just saved my life again. Just by being in the scene, you're saving my life. And everyone else's, I think, it just says she had that energy, the backbone. Yeah. Because she brought that gravitas with her that you cannot learn, you cannot be trained with. You she had it in her, and she was ready inherently, with just with her life. She's intensely beautiful. I think she's just such a beautiful human being. But there's also, there's depth. There's a lot of depth there, in her eyes, and just everything she every little gesture she makes, in my opinion, it just comes with weight of her life. And it's, she's young, but she has this experience, of being a fighter and a winner. Mm-hmm. And I think and it's and she of course gives her best to the world, and she's trying to be as positive as she can, and she's one of the most positive people I know. And she just has so much life to her, more life to her than most people I know who don't have disability. But at the same time, I understand it comes with a fight. I mean, we see only fraction of what her life is. We don't get to be her 24/7, right? So she really brought a lot of depth to this to the frame. And then I was learning as we went. We at some point had to rig the van with we had a particular rig. We had a little more time all of a sudden, because the guys needed to take a little bit more time setting up certain particular light at night. And so all of a sudden I had this luxury of 20 extra minutes, and we went. We played. We just went for a real rehearsal. Couple of more, and this, on the first take of this rehearsal take between the three of us, Lolo is doing her bit, and she goes from 0 to 100, like in a matter of seconds. And what she does in the scene immediately, it wasn't written. She just did her own rendition of it. But the intensity she brought, it to me, it's just one of those brilliant illustrations. What do you do with the paper? Like, how do you go from paper to something more than paper? Yeah, something completely different. And seeing her do that was a brilliant illustration of that. And all of a sudden, okay, well, we have a fantastic what would I call it? We have, I don't know. I don't know if I can come up with this. Well, basically, we have these actors who can do anything. Yeah. And who can really bring an added dimension to what we have on paper, and really, and the realization came early on. Thank God, and we could work with that. And so, yeah, she's some kind of a genius. And I think. What she does in the film is phenomenal. I've seen many films, as you can imagine. I continue being an active moviegoer. I love watching films, but the intensity with which she graces, and the depth with which she graces the and authenticity, which with all of which she graces the film and the screen, the likes of which I rarely seen. I've rarely seen, very few times in my life. I think, you know, I would, what comes to mind is I would say Anna Magnani, the Italian actress, the great Italian actress. I would say Gina Rowlands.
Yes, yes, yes.
So to me, in certain, maybe not 100%. Well, I mean, no, I would easily say 100%. Some things are more relaxed, of course, but it's just the way she lives in the frame and the way she laughs and smiles and is, my God. I mean, this is. I mean, I'm still pissed she's not on the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah.
Seriously, for what she didn't give me liberty. Because, you know, if she's not, you know, if she's not a hero of our time, then who is, really? And then, you know, and I mean, I'm happy. I mean, I can talk about actors forever because I think they're really, I think we're really blessed with their energy in the film. But also Max Stoyanov, it's his first major role, the Russian one, and he is still undiscovered. But what he brings to the film is pure gold. It's quite incredible. I think they're, as an ensemble, I think we were truly blessed.
Yeah,
with
definitely.
them.
I think the brilliant thing about all three of their performances is how responsive they are to one another, and how, you know, they won't overwhelm the scene and kind of step over each other, but they're reacting to each other and giving each other the space and supporting each other within the scene. And it's just, it works so well, and it's so electrifying between the three of them. So credit to them, but also credit to you in directing them.
Well, they connected. They really connected. Max Stoyanov came here 1 month before, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
So that it happened. Chris, unfortunately, I wanted Chris to be on the ground. I wanted the actor who played the main role. I wanted him to be for at least 2 months before the shoot, way back, because I wanted him to break in completely and become this Milwaukeean dude who's sleeping on the floor on his grandfather's couch, and actually works full-time employed at the company. But in the end, we had only 8 days. I literally had 30 minutes with him.
Wow.
30 minutes with him. Well, 1 hour, let's say.
Yeah.
We went to a coffee shop. I sat down, and the guy who never acted in his life in anything and was a full-time electrician, Brooklyn-based electrician, no acting experience, and no knowledge of the craft.
Yeah.
Very intelligent. Very intelligent.
Yeah.
A brilliant human being in a lot of respects, but zero experience. He wouldn't know what to even do with his, and you know, I mean, yeah. But I had only 1 hour to just break down the character, talk about it. He listened wide-eyed open. I mean, he really was. I think he was scared a little bit, but tried not to be. Of course, and he's not a fearful type, you know, he's not, it's not easy to scare really, but I think he just like, what's going on? What is this? Clearly that was in his eyes. And then off he went back to the medical transport company to continue learning the ropes of, you know, driving the van, driving actors, but him and Max bonded immediately. So all those 8 days, whatever he had on the ground, he spent a lot of time with Max. They bonded. Really, they became an odd couple. Really, and really, and the kid between them was Dima. Yeah. You know, Vic, played by Chris. Chris had to take care of him. You know, they lived in the same hotel, so the one who was making breakfast was Chris. The one who was driving everyone around the same van, he would use that van, was Chris. Chris had 2 jobs. He was acting job. He actually 3. He was the driver of the van. 99.9% of the stunts he did. And then he was driving Lolo from the hotel to the set. And after the shoot, he was driving Lolo back to the hotel. So he was really hands-on, incredibly hands-on. And then halfway through the shoot, we realized, my God, we've been driving, you know, 75 miles per hour and, you know, doing all this crazy improvised turns and 180 degrees and, you know, 15 people on the van, you know, 12 octogenarians, you know, this multilingual chaos going on. Nobody knows what's going on. And we haven't had a single accident or a single even situation close to an accident. Wow. And we realized, you know, this guy is a genius. And that's when we found out he actually, or remembered or connected the dots. He drives, you know, as an electrician, he drives a van in New York.
Right.
full time.
Driver,
and so we gave him a stunt driving credit. But yeah. to your point, I mean, the guy is brilliant. But he also had to add something he had never done in his life and drive safely and fast.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I would constantly yell at him and just like left, right, no. And he would get stressed out because he wouldn't remember the line or didn't do something. So he really had it the hardest of all, I would say. I mean, as brilliant as everyone may be, he had it the hardest because of how little experience he had before, how much depended on him. And it was a bilingual experience for him, fast driving, safety first. I mean, and we were shooting on, you know, with 1/5 of the budget. And so we had a tiny crew. And what Alice Austin, my collaborator on the project, my co-writer and the lead producer, you know, she pulled off a miracle by making the film without compromising the dramatic material, the number of scenes and the number of actors. We pulled off something for a fraction what it actually cost. And, you know, no one would get rich on this one, even if we had the right amount. But to honor the dramatic material, those 110 pages of the script, the way they were written, we needed 3-4 times more than we ended up making the film for. But the shooting budget was tiny, really tiny. But again, to your point, the three of them bonded. They bonded incredibly. There was chemistry there. There was human chemistry there.
Yeah.
And that chemistry, it was instant. It was immediate. And I think what really also helped everyone, and them in particular, everyone felt it was a war. No one could complain about anything. Nobody was whining. We're in it. We were in the trenches. It was the intensity of it.
Yeah.
We were, you know, we had to make the time. We couldn't be, we had to be on schedule. We didn't have extra days. If we missed a scene, that probably would be it. We didn't have time to rehearse, so things had to be delivered. Yeah. Just to give you an idea, you know, we had to go by the clock, and we couldn't go over 12 hours. It would take 1 hour to get everyone on the van. It would take 1 hour to get everyone off the van. People have needs. We needed to stop here and there. The DP locks in a position in the van, he can't move really much. You know, so we better shoot it out. We're on the highway driving 75 miles per hour. We may not have an exit for a couple of miles, 3 miles. Keep shooting, just keep doing it, you know. Then the sun is heating on this side, and sun was killing us. I mean, we were hoping for a nice gray consistency, you know, that feeling of that Milwaukee winter. So the sun is heating on this side. We had no time to organize it. And then we have to drive back, and the sun was heating in the opposite direction. How are we going to cut it?
Yeah.
It was driving Wyatt Garfield, our wonderful cinematographer. It was driving him absolutely crazy and nuts. Yeah. And I can imagine, it was like nerve-wracking because, you know, you're striving for the beauty and consistency and the aesthetics, and you can't. Right. Because, you know, in the middle of winter, it's supposed to be cold and freezing. And it was, by the way, it was freezing and sunny. What are you going to do about that? And so how to match all these things? I mean, everything was against us. And, you know, you run for your life, you can do your best. And then, you know.
Well, I think all those pressures and constraints really contributed to the energy of the film and the frantic nature of it. So I think it all worked in your favor, definitely.
You can plan for that. It was one of those experiences where every obstacle, every challenge we ended up recruiting it and worked for us. It's the intensity of it. Actually, out of the intensity of the process was born this very particular energy that we had the fortune of witnessing in retrospective. You know, not at the time, but we had the great fortune of capturing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of my favorite kind of moments of energy in the film is these musical set pieces, and you use music so brilliantly in the film to kind of bridge cultural and racial divides, but also kind of expose the appropriation of culture and Black music legacy through white musicians and audiences, rather implicitly, but I think kind of poignantly. Can you tell me about your use of music and how you approached setting up these set pieces?
Uh, the interesting thing is, well, I have very particular relationship with music. We all do. As a director, I have a very particular relationship with music. Just my understanding of what role music is playing in the film generally.
Yeah.
And yeah, interestingly, with this one, I'll speak, of course, about Give Me Liberty specifically. Most of the pieces, they're part of the DNA of the film. The greatest example would be Bon Iver, Holocene. I heard that song in 2013 when it came out, and it was pretty religious experience, I should say. And since then, I've listened to the song, wouldn't be an exaggeration to say a couple of hundred times, and I'm still not tired of it. Speaks something about the song, actually, says something about the song, because it is quite an incredible piece. Right around the time when we began to, actually a little bit into the process, Alice and I listened a lot to Bon Iver in the process of writing the script, together or separately. And we wrote the script with a specific reference to Holocene. There was actually a scene where they're stoned. It didn't make it into the film, but they're getting stoned and they're trying to repeat the words, and they just kind of crack up, because they can't and they don't understand it very well, et cetera, et cetera. That specific it was. But in the end, that scene didn't make into the film, but another scene did. But the piece stayed, and so it was not later on we were looking for pieces to kind of sweeten it up. No. It actually, every piece must be earned, just like a happy ending. They must be earned and fought for. Every piece that's in the film, none of them were looked for after the fact. They were all part of the process of they're part of the DNA of the film, basically, from way before the shooting began. In fact, the record that we have at James's is John Lee Hooker. It's it's one of my favorite musicians, and to me, it just it felt right. There's no politics in it. John Lee Hooker, Bon Iver, born in the USA, very particular history to that as well. Once a year, the Eisenhower Center has this talent show, and Aaron, actually, his favorite musician is Bruce Springsteen. He is. He comes from a hardworking Wisconsin family, and he just got such a working class attitude. Aaron is wonderful, and every talent show he performs a song by Bruce Springsteen. Right. And this time around, it happened to be Born in the USA, so we'll record that, and then, but the problem is, of course, you got to get the rights, and the thing is that. Bruce Springsteen had never allowed license this song to anyone in 35 years of its history.
Wow.
And he had been offered a lot of money by car making companies and politicians, etc. Okay. He never wanted to do that. And we had a wonderful music licensing person, Chloe. I don't remember her name. Chloe. Alice does. So the two of Alice and Chloe, they began communicating with the boss's people. And at some point, Alice began to communicate directly, and she wrote a beautiful letter addressed to Bruce Springsteen. And an answer came, and at a certain point, she basically understood she was communicating directly with Bruce Springsteen. And at some point, they asked for the movie, and they watched the movie. And they granted us the right to use the song.
Wow, that's great.
And we were not in the position to afford one word of that song. Honestly, we were not in the position to afford. the thought of this song.
Yeah.
So, but basically they were very kind to us, and it, you know, still ended up being quite pricey for us for the type of budget we had, but nevertheless we were able to afford it. And the reason he never wanted to license it, because people always viewed this song as an anthem to the glory of being an American, but it's actually a lament, you know, it's a lamentation.
Yeah.
It's a, you know, the song it's a sad song,
Yeah.
despite this upbeat, superficial kind of, you know, energy driven, adrenaline driven feel to it. You know, this song is a lamentation.
Yeah.
And the ethos was correct to use, you know, because it was not a poster. It was not a propaganda piece. It was a real human being, also, you know, a working person from a working class family, you know, from Milwaukee, a struggling town, a person with disability performing his song that was made for him, that, at a talent show, you know, it's like a documentary. So there's this, you know, that's, you know, the Boris, and it was granted to us, thanks to Alice, thanks to Chloe, thanks to Bruce Springsteen, you know, thanks to all this positive energy. Something similar happened with Holocene, by the way, because that was the only song that was off the table. And we were screwed completely, because I was ready to shoot myself, because the news came down the line, we couldn't use the song, and it's like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? I mean, it's just like taking the soul out of the movie. And again, the incredible Andrew Swant, a co-producer on the film, who helped us all around, but also with this connection, and had direct contact with Justin Vernon, and I believe Justin saw the film and finally approved of it. I also wanted very much to use God Bless America, because the choir, their Russian choir, performs God Bless America very beautifully. They did it for me when I recorded them for the first time about 4 years ago, and I wanted to close the film with that. I wanted the full cast and them, the Russian choir, perform God Bless America, but we couldn't afford it. Irvin Berlin donated the rights to the song to the Boy Scouts of America, I believe, and it was like $35,000 to use the song, or $40,000, and it was not negotiable, so we couldn't. That was off the table. Yeah,
I thought it would have been public domain.
No, it's not. Actually, it was very smart. I started that. He actually came up with the song. I mean, the man lived for 102 years, I think, or 99 years, something. And he was lucid till the last day. I think he's basically just decided to go. You know, he wouldn't go if he didn't decide. But the man wrote probably like over 1,000 songs. And he wrote God Bless America back in 1918 and shelved it. He was just churning them out and shelving. And then the time came, I think in 36, when he sort of like, okay, I'm going to recycle one of my songs. And he pulled that off the shelf. He came up with different lyrics, I believe. And I think there was like, with 38, I don't remember, there was a point when America needed it, he felt. And he released it then. And then I think it's 50 years from some, and then he kept renewing the licensing. So if you keep renewing the license, you know, you still own it. So he renewed it, and kind of like that. No, it was not, sadly. Yeah. What else? I mean, all the pieces, they come from the heart, and you know, I spend a lot of time, because when I edit with sound. So it's essentially, I'm not a sound designer, but I really come up with the design of the sound. I mean, that's what I do. So I have like up to 45 tracks during my edit. That's what I have. So I really finesse the way the music goes in and out. It's very important, and worked on a couple of elements. I really wanted to blend in. Actually, interestingly, there's one song in the movie that had never been, the world just discovered it with the movie. It's the first time it's ever played, because it's played by these two people who are from Ukraine, and they were associated with the Society of Belarusian Music in Detroit, I think. Oh, no. Cleveland. Belarusian music. And that song was granted to them by the family that brought it from this small place in Belarusia. And that song originated there. And the song is a folk song, but it's from that place. So it's an undocumented completely. So they passed it on to them, and the man remembered the music and the words.
Yeah.
And you know, it had never been recorded in the history. That's the song that played during the wake.
Right. Wow.
And I worked a lot on the transition. I was so that it goes from and go dun 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 with to blend it in. So for me, this is the encounter of the deep Eastern European world, you know, and you know, the American South to kind of to have one come out of the other. For me, it was very important, seamlessly. And I think I spent a week. It's just like you go crazy because one day you think you nailed it, then you listen the next day. No, I can still just to work it. And we worked with a phenomenal mixer in Paris, Julien Perez, who took great care of that and worked on all those transitions. It's very subtle, but it's mystical. You know, it's magical, and it's you know, it's like a prayer basically. You know, you do it. You know, and people may think, well, no one will notice. No, people will always notice. They may not be aware of it.
They'll feel it.
But they will feel it. Oh, 100%. But that's how everything is.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like my favorite apocryph about, you know, Ingmar Bergman. They're doing a scene. He's looking for a blanket. And he's like, I need a blanket. I need a blanket. Give me a blanket. And there was no blanket. There's a blanket in the drawer of this wardrobe piece. You know, and they pull out they pull out the drawer, and the drawer is empty. He says, well, how come there's supposed to be a blanket? He goes through the script. He says, well, you see, it says the drawer with a blanket, but we never pull it out. The dresser says, you know, the prop department says, but he goes, but the drawer knows.
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, but this is how you make it, because I mean, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean, how else? And then you see it there, and then you feel it, and then either you hit by it you know, like by a truck, or it goes like past you, and you like, you don't remember what you just saw. It's meaningless. It's empty.
Right.
It's just a form. Again, it's just an empty drawer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it goes back to the film's feeling of authenticity, and even, you know, all of the sets that you're using and how you decorated them. They just seem so found and naturalistic.
We had phenomenal production designer hailing from Nashville. We have two great people from Nashville with extensive experience working in film. Jeremy Mazza did our sound, and sound, as you can imagine, we had up to 12 mics on a lot of scenes, and it was hellish, hell of a job. It was a lot of work, and he loved it, every second of it. And it's out of the 20 films that he made, according to him, this one is his favorite, even though probably he made very little. I mean, he made enough probably, but just probably he wasn't paid as lavishly as he normally would get paid. But he loved the film, he loved the project. Everyone, you know, worked for less what they normally make. They were so generous with their time and their energy and just their love of film. We were truly blessed with them. But Jeremy Mazza, of course, God bless him, because he made this possible. To re-record things like this is basically impossible. A number of people are no longer with us physically, and which is very sad. And the second treasure that we were blessed with from Nashville is Bart Mangrum, our production designer. Worked with worked with Harmony Korine at some point, and a number of other acclaimed filmmakers. And Bart, of course, Bart had the very big budget. With that kind of budget, you could certainly do anything. He had $2,000. Bart is a genius, and simple as that. And he loved it. And he drove here. He was such a soldier. He was absolutely brilliant. I mean, what a man. I mean, I love him. I miss the experience of making this film because of the people that were there, because, you know, coming to the set and seeing Bart, you know, it's just like everything is going to be all right. You know, I mean, the things he would just do is incredible. incredible. And, you know, I mean, the idea is you're not obsessed with authenticity per se, but you're obsessed with a certain sense of truth.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, you want to, you know, you're not doing it, you know, it's not fake, it's real. It's life. It can be absurd, but it needs to feel right. And then you believe it, you know, and then it's real. You know, it's like we're not trying to be authentic. I think we were just being, you know, by doing what we were doing. And then it works.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah. I like it.
Because, you know, we were dealing with 2018, you know, whenever we're shooting it, even though some people in Russia say, well, it feels like the 90s, you know, because we're not really relying on gadgets and all kinds of funny things, funny phones, you know. And I was trying to make it to rely, you know, less on, I tried to avoid the trappings of the time we're living in, you know, with all this GPS, et cetera. To make it in a way, I mean, I think it helps to make it timeless because it's that kind of film. And I'm happy that it feels like it's the 90s, but also the texture.
Yeah.
The texture and the feel of the city and the feel of, and the people from the 20th century, from another land, from another planet, populating this new land, just such a wild gathering of people. So I'm very happy that it has this timeless quality to it. I think we all are.
Yeah.
Because it's you know, it's focused on something that it's centered around something that is timeless. It's the landscapes of human faces, their hands, their relationships. You know, that's what matters at the end.
Yeah. So I'm really interested to hear you mention that you wanted to use God Bless America, and I know you're constantly, you know, reiterating that it's not a political film, but for me it is such a deeply political film. And I think, you know, like the mentioning of Born in the USA's kind of ironic undercutting of the American dream, I feel like that runs through the film. And I feel like I got to put you on the spot and ask you more about it. You know, the title of the film, Give Me Liberty. How do you feel about the notions of liberty and freedom in America and the American dream?
Yeah, well, first of all, I like it when people treat it as political. I don't mind it at all. I think it's great. I think people need to feel what they feel, you know, and the wider the gamut, the bigger the paradigm, what people feel about it, and the more different it is, the better it is. It means that the film can be interpreted in many different ways, as it should. It's a compliment, I think, to the work in the end, not necessarily to our work, but to what it is in the end, because it's not a poster, it's not a symbol, it's not a message movie. It's an image. An image is open to multiple interpretations. It's a living, and it's frozen in time in a certain way, but it's also living, and it's living through you, because you have, that's your feeling. It's and they also connected to it, but in a different way, and it's great and it's fantastic. Politically, well, and number two, I think it's hard not to treat something as such as Give Me Liberty politically in 2020. You have a white driver, you have a African-American client of his, they have a fight. It's almost inevitable today, and it's okay and not okay. I think, some people really don't want to make anything political, don't want to make any statements. I don't mind if people read it this way, but it's inevitable if you live in Milwaukee. Everything is a little bit political, you see? Yeah. So, and such is our time. So I'm not afraid of introducing these elements for fear of being interpreted this way. It needs to feel right.
Yeah.
I think that, I wouldn't probably, if I were choosing the song for Aaron, I probably would choose something else, but that'd be a directorial choice. That'd be imposed upon him. So I'm imposing my idea. I'm being clever. Mm-hmm. But I love Born in the USA. I'm saying, okay, great. You don't want to be meta. You don't want to go, you don't want to be too clever. You want to be, that's authenticity, is know when not to interfere. Follow your feeling. Don't be afraid of being misinterpreted. You're going to get in trouble. If you're trying to cover all your bases, you're going to end up something that stinks. basically, that nobody's going to be happy with. Someone will hate your movie, and there are people who hate the movie. I mean, I find it shocking, but there's people who cannot stand it, and that's the way it is. And if I tried to please them and make sure that they like it, I'm sure that the other part that loves it would not. Or most likely I would end up, or we would end up in between two chairs on the floor. Because, you know, it's just someone said, I don't know the key to success, but I know the key to failure is to trying to please everyone. So I think it needs to feel right. If it ends up being a little bit more political, well, it's not up to you. You're done with the movie, move on. Let people interpret it. I'm sure a couple of 100 years from now, if we're around, you know, when a lot of the problems are going to be gone, people I think that a lot of the context will be kind of lost. And people will just look for warmth, a certain human quality that will persevere, will survive. You know, the constanta will survive, because all this political stuff, you know, it's all temporary. You know, this is just the surface. I think deep down there, the humanity, our common denominator, we're all good. We're good people. I think, you know, essentially, all of us are good people. Give Me Liberty's incredible history, again, very mystical, because I think that the craft of filmmaking generally, and the craft of, more specifically, if we're talking about my craft as director, it's always twofold. There's actually the métier, not the craft, but there is twofold. One is craft. It's the craft. It's just actually understanding what it takes to make a piece of furniture. And another one is entirely metaphysical. And one without the other is, it's never going to be full. It's either just the form, perfectly executed piece of nothing, or a lot of soul, a lot of feeling, but I'm sorry, it's falling apart because the person lacks the craft. So I think it's twofold. But, you know, Give Me Liberty is the title is a great illustration to the metaphysical nature of this film. Ellis and I were writing the script. You know, it took us a few months, number of months. The title wasn't coming up. You know, and sometimes title exists before the work is written. I have a book of titles that the scripts for which will never be written probably, but nice titles, great titles, funny titles. But in this case, title was just not coming up. You know, and you just kind of, okay, let's not stress out about it. It'll find itself, you know. And we kept on coming up with something, this and that, until one day we saw someone in line, in a coffee shop in line with a T-shirt that said, Give Me Liberty. And he had a blindfolded Statue of Liberty. And I think, it just said, Give Me Liberty. We approached that gentleman. It was actually, he owned he was a Tunisian gentleman from Tunisia. And he was a mechanic. He owned a car shop, became friends. And actually, he gave me this shirt as a gift to us, actually, not to me, I think to both of us. And we have it. And so almost immediately, we wrote a T-shirt in that version of the script that we had. A T-shirt, a character who wears it. The character at some point would just take it off and give it to another character. And that character, it was actually Dima, puts it on because he just embraces America. He loves America more than Americans. And then he dies in the end, believe it or not. So he wears the T-shirt, and it's, you know, the script went through many iterations. And at some point, make long story short, Alice took it for a spin, Alice Austin, and turned the 8-10 day structure into 1 day. And before we knew it, number of scenes were gone, number of characters were gone. That character who wore the T-shirt was gone, the T-shirt was gone, but the title, just Give Me Liberty, kind of stayed on. And we thought, we got other problems, this is not the biggest problem. We're going to change, we'll find it. But the funny thing is, the script went around and no one ever asked us a question. The question of why is it called Give Me Liberty? And at some point we kind of became aware of it. We thought it means it feels right. It means it doesn't bother people. There's no I'm not getting it. And also when you take the script and before you even read it, Give Me Liberty, you don't want to read it really. It's hard for you to turn the page if the title just not inviting you. And first indication that it means that the title is not pushing people away. And number two, once people are done, it's like, well, I love the script and Give Me Liberty. And it's just, it kind of, there is not a single mention of Give Me Liberty in the script anymore, but the title stayed on. And so, okay, so we didn't change it. We continued living with it, living with it, living with it. And then came a point we understood. I had similar experience with my first film when I tried to find the right title. And then at a certain point I realized it's fate. You can't change it. It just kind of, that's it. That's what it is. And there came a point when we felt, you know, it's too late. We're not going to change it. Everyone likes it. Nobody's asking a question about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe that right around Sundance, I, for myself, processed it and finally understood that I connected the history of the making of the film with the title, because the history of the making of the film was as important as the film itself. And I think when in October of 2017, when the project fell through, and all of a sudden from a fully budgeted film and fully crewed up film, like overnight, we got the call that we were no longer financed. And after 3 years of fighting for the project, everything fell apart and we looked like imposters. And it was a disaster. And we were ready to walk away. Well, we never were ready to, it was never an option. But we basically understood that either we'll make it with what we can, or we're never going to make it. And it was our give me liberty or give me death moment. And this is why the title stayed. And we didn't understand that we were living that title out. We were living it out. We were really living through it. We were earning it, really. And so the title was not just about the movie. It was also about us making, you know, this film, you know, and honoring our lives, because so much time had been invested. So many promises have been made and we had to deliver. And people were ready to quit, you know. I mean, we started losing people. We knew the choir wouldn't live on. You know, there are, you know, octogenarians, and half of them survived cancer. And Lolo got a promotion at her job. She had a full-time job at the time as an editor. And all of a sudden she could give us only 3 days instead of 2 weeks that we needed. And Chris was nowhere to be found. And Max Steiner, this young up-and-coming actor with a tiny apartment and a mortgage he had to pay, had turned down dozens of films and plays in favor of Give Me Liberty. And the project never came. And his wife began to suspect that he went nuts and came up with the idea of this imaginary Kirill living in America with an American movie. Because, you know, that's what it, but we had to make it. And we, you know, we basically looked at each other in the eye, Ellis Austin and I, and we said, we're going to make it. We're going to do it. We, you know, and 2 weeks later we had $100,000 and then we had 150. And Alice kept looking, we kept looking for money as we went. We were building the car, we were speeding, we were racing through the city of Milwaukee. So Give Me Liberty, it actually was, it was more than a title for the movie. It was the title for the process of how it was made. Right. So it's really interesting that it's not like coming up with a story for it. Okay, let's just kind of come up with a legend. It made sense. You look back and you realize you understand that nothing is chaotic, really. Everything is a structure. You may not understand it at the time when it's happening, but everything is structured.
Yeah, yeah.
So Give Me Liberty, but it does have this political feel to it. But I think because the movie is also about, I mean, everything in our lives is about freedom. Because people, I believe, it's one of the most fundamental questions in our lives. What is freedom? I think that overwhelming majority are not thinking about it at all. Mm-hmm. And the majority of those who are thinking about this question once in a while, they don't have the right answer, or they don't have an answer at all. I really think it's a very important question. But I think the film, I think in this film, these characters, they want their liberty, they want their freedom. They want to be free, and they want to make choices. They're trying to make choices, and they're fighting for their choices. So it is a film about human, you know, freedom, human liberty, to be, you know, to have that liberty and to execute it and to exercise it, and it's hard. It's hard. Yeah. You know, it's a fighting to live your life with dignity, to go through one day with dignity, to get from A to B with dignity. you know. That's what it is about. So there's somehow, it's, I think Alice likes to quote someone by saying that the title is the invisible color of the book. Yes, it doesn't need to, I don't believe title needs to explain anything or needs to be a clue into anything, etc. It needs to feel right.
Yeah.
It's like a name. It's like, I'm looking at this person, your name is this, you know. It's like you naming thing. It feels right. It feels right. It's just the feeling of it. It just feels right.
Yeah.
But inevitably, as you're saying, political, yeah, sure, why not? Give me liberty. Yeah, we're gonna fight for it. You know, Vic is fighting, Tracy's fighting, the choir is fighting, Dima is fighting, everybody's fighting with each other, for each other, against each other, you know, for their lives, discovering, finding it. At the end, there is a protest, and Tracy needs to get her brother out of jail, and Vic needs to get to Tracy. They need to connect, and what the protest is about doesn't matter. What matters is that these people come together, they connect, and they're find safety with each other. They, you know, they need each other.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it, I think.
Yeah, that's very touching. So we've had a great conversation here, and thank you so much. And maybe just quickly, you can tell us what you're working on now, or what you have coming up next, or you're working on any films?
Alice and I are working very actively, and actually, if there was anything to be grateful to COVID-19 for, in our case, it would be that the opportunity to actually to work on a new script.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this futuristic thriller that we began our collaboration with. I met Alice. I had a first draft of a sprawling 180-page mess of a script with a lot of interesting things in it. And then we turned it into a second draft, differently imperfect, but, you know, more structured, you know, with just a different script. And then we put that one on the back burner to do quickly our small film. Only that one took also 5 years. So 5 years later, 4.5 years later, we got back to that old script, both suspecting it will be shocked by its poor qualities and how ridiculous we would find it. But we both found it interesting, and some things were more actually made more sense today than they did 5 years ago. And we decided to take it for a spin and honor it and bring it to completion. And we did that, I would say, rather successfully, in terms of we arrived at a third draft about 3 weeks ago. And then we read it, and our manager read it. And you know, there were some problems, let's put it this way. And we realized that too. And we took a completely different turn. We really took it for quite a dramatic spin. And now it's a brand new script now. And I think we're about a week and a half away from having a solid draft of a brand new script based on that old version. It couldn't be more different from Give Me Liberty because of its the theme. It's again, it's Earth, the world of the future, about 30 some years from now. But it's one day. It's also, we've been told that Give Me Liberty is unpredictable from scene to scene. This one, we tried to keep that as well, this unpredictability from scene to scene.
Great.
And we took awfully a lot of time creating an interesting and sophisticated plot. Not too clever for its own sake, not too complicated, but sophisticated. And that was not easy. It was not easy, and there are still some questions to answer, but I think we're very close. And I would say about 10 days from a solid draft, at which point I will feel psychologically very relieved, and I would be very happy to move on and do other work. We have 2 other things that we are very interested in developing and having them ready to go as soon as we were given a chance. We're also looking at some other people's work for rewrites, and for me possibly to direct. Let's see how that goes. But I think we all need to be patient, disciplined, and with blinds on the side, hardworking, and profoundly optimistic. I think we must. I mean that because there's no other way. Life is, that's.
Well, that's excellent. And I wish you both the best of luck in developing those projects. And I
Thank you.
can't wait to see how they turn out and shape up. And I want to thank you for joining us and applaud your team for a truly electrifying, bold, and hilarious, and humanistic and optimistic film. And it feels like just the kind of film we need right now. So thank you so much to you and your team. And thanks to our audience watching at home. And we hope you check out more films on GFF On Demand. And thank you again, Kirill.
Thank you for the honor to have our film shown at your festival. Thank you so much for the time you took to speak with me about the experience of making it. And thank you for watching it all. And I hope you loved it. And only if you loved it, please go and give us good ratings. And get the word out there about the film. Sadly, a lot of people still don't know we exist. And we love knowing that people see it and hear about it. It just gives us just sense of accomplishment that film is reaching people out there. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, and stay safe and healthy. And I wish to all of us to get through this thing as soon as possible. And I hope our wonderful scientists will come up with some kind of cure or vaccine even, and soon, and we can go back to good normal life, and be able to see all our relatives and people we'll love and give everyone a hug and not worry about, being contagious. I think, but I wish also everyone to use this opportunity to work on what we love to the fullest, because right now we can actually do that. And I know psychologically it's kind of tough being isolated and not being a part of the rat race that we're so used to, and not have that as many distractions as they normally are. But it's also a great opportunity for us to focus on things that really matter, and do less perfunctory, running around, more, meaningful focus. Meaningfully focused work.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful parting message. Thank you. And thank you all so much. And we'll stay safe and take care, everyone. And we'll see you later.
Thank you. Thank you.